There's such a beautiful calm and serenity that takes over after we tune in with a mantra. It entrains the mind to a one-pointed focus and inner-directed awareness. Makes us availably aware to our vibration, the fact that we are vibration, the fact that we are energy vibrating at various frequencies throughout our field. And serenity is something that is cultivated, I believe, very deeply as a result of the practice of yoga and meditation. Serenity is cultivated by withdrawing the senses in many ways, not allowing ourselves to be distracted in such a way that we lose our awareness, distracted by way of the senses being directed outward. And through the one of the limbs of yoga, namely pratyahara, sense withdrawal, we are withdrawing the senses from the external world and turning them inward toward the observed mind. And then through regular practice, we hope to carry with us that state of pratyahara, even as the senses are directed outward, have cultivated an intelligence of bearing witness to ourselves experiencing our environment, not just being reactive to our environment. Being reactive to our environment causes us to miscreate in life. When we can observe our reactions and respond, we start to be creators in our life, creating a deeper availability to connect to destiny. So we both are creatures of will and sovereignty and agency, but we are also creatures that are governed by a higher power, a higher divinity, a higher destiny. When we can start to rein the senses inward and connect to our inner being, we can merge those two aspects of self together to be conscious human beings. And the Serenity Prayer is a beautiful invitation to reclaiming that divine sovereignty. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Serenity is defined as the state of being calm, peaceful, and untroubled. Often used in recovery community, this prayer is used as a motto or a reminder to help regain perspective and clarity beyond the compulsivity that is generated as a result of addiction. Addiction aside, however, we all have the tendency to lose our peace and try to seek control over things we cannot control by various means and mechanisms. This creates suffering and mental and emotional distress. To put ourselves in the place of peacefully relinquishing a desire and belief of having control over uncontrollable things requires a right sizing of the will and the ego, and a right sizing of the over-identification with the thinking process. In seeking God's assistance in this, or the assistance of a higher power beyond our own will, we are in essence stepping out of our ego or the will of the mind and surrendering to a higher power of the heart. For some, it's helpful to see God as a separate entity from themselves, as maybe a savior or a parent figure, right? But I believe that limits us from the fully experiencing God and the higher power that is available to us. Because there is an essence of that God essence within ourselves, we must recognize that in order to implement the wisdom that this prayer calls upon. We can't draw the wisdom from outside of ourselves. The wisdom has to be generated from within in order to really be wisdom. Otherwise, it's just advice. It's through this realization that a godly essence is within us, right? It is wisdom. That gives us the power and ability to surrender the ego in exchange for a stronger sense within, a stronger power. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. The quality of courage is born of the will. From a yogic perspective, the quality of will is born of the Manipura chakra, right? The third chakra, the gateway from the low triangle of consciousness, the survivalistic self of the first, second, and third chakra, to the higher triangle of consciousness, mutual connection, divine expression, intuition, and connection to higher power. This is associated with the fire element, the Manipura chakra, the courage, the transformation energy. For the energy of the will, or proper alignment with the ego, whose job it is to serve the God-inspired self, the low centers of consciousness, first, second, and third chakra, must be reconciled, must be balanced, must be healed, must be aligned, in order for courage to take form and generate wisdom. Jesus, Buddha, Guru Ramdas, Krishna, all of these were an embodied spiritual consciousness that this speaks of. Serenity, courage, and wisdom. When the low centers are reconciled or balanced, the proper operation of the will and courage is implemented to facilitate change, transformation, and evolution of consciousness. Ultimately, these change, transformation, and evolutionary qualities are born of courage. And this is where the wisdom comes in. We begin to cultivate a wisdom, a knowing, and a serenity of understanding that God consciousness unveils within us. Knowing what we can control, our relationship with this. What we can't control, everything else. The things that we can't change, and we relinquish the desire to control it, and the things that we can change. Through that understanding, we develop the courage to cultivate wisdom, holding ourselves accountable. Today's Kriya set, we are working with the Kriya to balance the mind and the heart unto infinity, right? So it's connecting the earthly self and the spiritual self to expand beyond a limited framework of understanding. So we use not only concepts, right? Let's use a prayer as an example today. We use yogic technology, we use breath, we use mantra, all to come from different dimensional areas of experience to understand this larger governing concept. Let's start with Sufi circles. Hands are on the shins, eyes are drawn up to third eye center.